you for staying with the Monday Report. We'd like to hear your views on this next conversation. We're keeping an eye on our special series Inside UHURU'S Cabinet at Trevor Mbijat, Citizen TV Kenya, at Sam Gituku. Use the hashtag Monday Report. I'll read some of your feedback on this next story. So he has become one of the most trusted cabinet secretaries in President Uhuru Kenyatta's cabinet, accompanying him on several tours to foreign countries and even negotiating on behalf of Kenya on mega infrastructural projects. Picked from the banking sector, where he was serving as a chief executive officer at a local bank, Transport and Infrastructure Cabinet Secretary James Macharia had to give up hefty perks and his health preferences to sit in President Kenyatta's inaugural cabinet. At 62, CS Macharia believes the shift to Chinese contractors has borne mutual benefit despite the steep rise in public debt. In a wide-ranging interview in our series Inside UHURU'S Cabinet, CS Macharia spoke to Sam Gituku about his journey of transition.
Thank you for staying tuned to Citizen TV, and this season we are speaking to the cabinet secretaries that have served under President Uhuru Kenyatta. And we are lucky today to speak to James Macharia, who has been a cabinet secretary for Health Docket and later the Transport Ministry. And let's step back a little bit to almost 9 years ago when James Macharia, right? Yes. We didn't know much about you, at least in the public arena. Then we hear that he is going to be our cabinet secretary for health. What was that, and what do you remember of that particular day?
I remember everything, everything, because it was such a shift, a big shift, that here I am. I have never worked in government. I've been in the corporate sector, you know, and then all of a sudden you get invited to join government. Not for any other position, but for the minister, cabinet secretary. And so it took a bit of hours for me to basically digest that, make sure that I really was committed in my thought that I was going to accept the position. But on reflection, I said, look, these opportunities come once in a lifetime. Once in a lifetime, because it will never happen again. So I said to myself, yes, I'll leave the bank. By then I was 54 years old. And so I said I was going to have retired from the bank anyway in 6 years' time. And I said I might as well now commit those final years to serving government and serving the people of Kenya. And it's true, it was serving because you had to make a sacrifice in terms of how much you're going to earn. And this is something which you have to share with your family. When I joined, my salary went to 20% to what I was getting in the bank.
So a slash
of 80%.
Down to a slash of 80%.
But then balanced on the fact that it was a chance in a lifetime to serve. You know, frankly, even if it was 10%, I was still going to join government.
On that particular day and the days leading to that, what was happening? Because I mean, it's a call, yes, but it doesn't just come. There has to be work that has been done. What was it for you?
Well, as you know, the president had just won an election, together with his running mate, the deputy president. And so they were trying to craft a government, a team. And to do that, of course, they requested CVs from various people. And I remember a week before, I was called. I was in Tanzania on duty because one of the bank I was working for had a subsidiary in Tanzania. And somebody called me and said, we have been asked to get some good CVs. And I think you have a good CV. Can you forward to us your CV? Same day. And so I quickly updated on my laptop and sent to this gentleman the CV. But I didn't think about it again because I thought it was just a routine thing. I never thought it would end up with a telephone call. But on the day when I was called, yes, in the morning, a few politicians were calling. I think by then rumors were going out. Of course, people wanting to make sure they get associated with my appointment. And so when I was called, yes, it was still a shock because I never believed it would happen.
Right.
I never even briefed my employer, because when you go to State House, you are not allowed to make telephone calls.
So where were you when you received this call?
I was having lunch at Fairview Hotel with some clients.
Right.
Before it was served, the call came, so I had to leave the lunch, because the president asked, "Where are you?" And I said, I was in Fairview. He said, "Oh, Fairview is very near State House. So within 10 minutes, can you come?" And the rest is history.
Did you have his line or?
No, they called on a landline. Actually, what happened, frankly, now I remember very well, the call came, and I ignored it, because I didn't know the number.
Right.
And I was having clients. Then I got a message saying, "Can you please pick the call when it comes next." And when it came, it was the president's secretary on the line, and put through to the president. And so, as I said, the rest is history.
Did you know each other before then?
We had met a few times. As I say, in the corporate world, especially if you're in the banking sector, you meet almost everybody, because you go to market your business.
Right. And so now you get to State House. Who are you with?
Going to State House, we are put in a room. I found 3 other people there. One of them I knew, Amina Mohammed. The other ones I didn't know, CS Rotich and CS Matiangi. And we were just there looking at each other. Nobody is saying anything, because we don't know why they are there in the first place. And so we, only towards the end, when I think they came and said, "The 4 of you prepare some brief citation, because we are going to announce this evening about your appointment." So you had to put us 2 or 3 paragraphs.
There was no sort of an interview before then?
There was, actually. Like I said, you are called individually.
Okay.
Individually. When I was called, I found the president in a certain room with the deputy president. And he asked, would you like to serve? Of course, you can't say no. It's a special honor to be asked in the first place. And what really struck me was they said, they even announced the ministry. Said you'll be nominated rather, to be CS of Health.
So for you, what is the striking difference between working for the corporate world and now working for government that is also embroiled in political policies?
That's a very, very, very big question. And I would rather maybe discuss with you outside there.
Okay.
It's a very deep question which requires a lot of reflection.
Okay. All right.
I'd like to lead you outside.
Show me there.
Yeah, thank you. Please.
Okay. Right. Waziri, talking about the difference between corporate and coming out to work for government, what is it?
It's a very big difference, because private sector and government requires a different perspective. In the private sector, you are actually driven by profit, to make profit for your shareholders. In public service, you are driven by the need to provide service, which sometimes cannot be quantified in money terms. So you have to look at things very, very differently. Things change very quickly in public service, whereas in private sector, it's very structured. You know what's going to happen every day, what's going to happen every week. But in public service, you wake up one morning, God forbid it could be a disaster or something has happened. So you have to adjust yourself very quickly.
So quickly.
Yes.
Right, and if you reflect on what those adjustments were like, because this day you're the boss of a bank. Tomorrow you're working for a ministry. How did you do that?
Well, what was going for me basically is because I'd worked in very different environments, in London, in Zambia, Tanzania, and that ability to adjust helped me a lot in terms of now moving from the private sector, the bank, to the ministry. The good thing is that there's one common denominator, and that is ability to manage, so management. And that's why they said you don't have to be a doctor to be a CS of health.
Right.
Even now, We have Mutahi, who is not actually a doctor.
Right.
And so it is the management aspect which is very, very important, because you are managing people, you are managing resources, you are managing operations.
And how now to reconcile the public expectations, because we are such a political country. There's even a time that people are saying that we need ministers who sit in parliament because they understand the issues of Mwananchi. How have you managed now to close that gap?
You see, for Mwananchi, as long as you deliver what they expect. Yeah. If you say roads, you've done the roads for them. If it's a health sector, you've provided universal health care. So long as you provide that, then you don't have to be a politician. And as you know, our structure helps a lot, because we have committees in parliament where we go to answer questions. But because of that, you need to reflect a lot on a day-to-day basis. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
let's proceed and see
Yeah.
how much more we can talk about. Oh yeah, 5. So that means 5 principal secretaries.
5 PSs.
How do you deal with that? And previously, there used to be a minister and assistant ministers. Well, right now they are CASs. But how do you deal with that?
It is actually very challenging, because you see, those 5 state departments, 4 of them were ministries before. If you take public works, if you take housing, if you take transport and roads. And it's only shipping and maritime now which has been added. But those were ministries before. But what you have to do is to make sure you have your priorities right. Because you can't be everywhere and do everything. So when you have a huge ministry, you have to now decide in each state department what is the priority. Yeah? What you have a big impact, and then focus on that. Then make sure you have a proper management structure where you have good people working for you, PSs who are focused and aligned with what you want. Then it becomes a lot easier to delegate and to make sure you go as and when it's necessary to have meetings with them.
We'll get back to the ministry that you had now, but let's rewind a little bit and talk about when you are the cabinet secretary in charge of health. Again, from banking sector to health. And one of the projects that you came up with was the managed equipment service.
Yes,
is that the title?
That's right.
And it was quite a bit controversial, with the governor saying that they're having their resources deducted before the money goes to the counties ahead of time. Looking back, how do you reflect on such a project that has become a burden for counties? If you have to look at, I don't know if you've been able to look at the impact they have had.
A lot can be said about the MES. But the fact of the matter is, it has had the highest impact in the health sector. And now with the issue of COVID, some can tell you, if we didn't have the equipment which we've had taken to the counties, we could have had a very serious challenge. You even had when the president was reading his State of the Union address, comparing, for example, how many ICU beds were there on this date, 2013, and how many ICU beds are there now. How many dialysis machines were there then, and how much are there now. It is because of MES. And there is not a burden to the county governments at all, because this was extra money which was allocated by national government to pay over time. The controversy came because some of the governors wanted to do the procurement. And this is a fact. The fact that the procurement was being done on a wholesale basis by national government, some of the governors did not like that. They wanted to do the procurement for reasons which your guess is as good as mine. And so this is what brought the controversy. Eventually, as you know, all governors signed for the MES, except one. So it was a very good project. And you see, to make sure there was buy-in, we took the CEC of Health, CEC of Finance, into Multimedia University for 3 days to make sure they understood the MES project. And from there, they went and advised their bosses.
But for those who claim that this is likely a program that was conceived by the national government for the sake of what this country has known as kickbacks, how true is that?
You see, this is not even buying equipment. This is actually equipment which is for lack of a better word, leased out. So there was no upfront payment which would bring in issue of kickbacks. It was misconception, I can tell you for sure, because we didn't have money to buy all that equipment. So to make sure we gave wananchi the service, that's why we actually call it managed equipment service. To make sure that wananchi got the service, and then the government paid that service over time. So wananchi would not know whether it was bought or not. The only thing is they would have the service.
Subsequently, a lot has happened in the Ministry of Health. I'm sure you watch and see what's going on. I don't know that you say, I'm glad I'm not there, but did you at any time experience what has become the cartels within the Ministry of Health?
Well, there was always that issue that mafia houses, I don't know what they were calling it, mafia house. And, but you see, it's a conception, it's a misconception sometimes, because you see, like I say, the key thing is to remain focused on what you're trying to do. I don't want to draw too much into that because, of course, a lot of time has gone since we were there. But I think there is a bit of misconception about those cartels issues.
Fast forward to now the Ministry of Transport since, is it 2015 or thereabout? Yes, 2015. And your first major project that you delivered was the SGR. And again, and I know I've asked you this question before, but there's been this never-ending conversation about how the price of the SGR was inflated. It was revised from what President Kibaki's government had set it at. Any reason why there was such a variance in pricing?
No, in fact, it was never changed. You know, people talk about different numbers, but it was never changed. The figure which is there today is what was conceptualized in 2011, you know, during Kibaki's time. And that in fact, the negotiations about the figures were agreed that time, about 327 billion shillings. And there's nothing new about that. I mean, how it was arrived at, it's not like a secret. It is all there to be seen. It's been audited, you know. Have we ever heard Auditor General saying that the figure was overstated? Because those are the overseers of government, the finances.
What was it? We've heard from people not less than the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. We've heard from Jimmy Wanjigi in an interview recently on Citizen TV saying that prices were inflated.
They talk about different concepts. I think the key thing is differentiate politics from reality. And I would not like to comment on what Jimmy Wanjigi or others have said. But what I would like to say is that let's differentiate between the facts and politics. You know, today you can come up with an argument that this thing is costing so much because you want to score politically, right? But what I can assure you is that in terms of the structures in government, which ensure that there is value for money and that public finances are according to what it was meant to be, those confirmations have been done by the Public Accounts Committee, by the Public Investment Committee, Auditor General. If ever you had any of those institutions raising issues about the SGR, then come to us. Because comments made on a public platform, political platform, that's not something I think we'd like to comment on.
Okay, yes. And let's talk about what you can really authoritatively speak about. Initially, the SGR was got all the way to Malaba, then crossed over to the side of Uganda, and now it went up to Naivasha, and we were told that for now, that's it. Where was that decision arrived at? Because you also know that there had been some failure to commit by the government of Uganda at the very least.
You see, SGR was conceptualized as a regional project, actually connecting about 3 to 4 countries, you know, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, yeah? So in our case, our business was to make sure that so long as those countries do SGR, then we can take the SGR to their border. But if they don't give us commitments that they're going to do SGR, then we can do SGR from here all the way to the border and becomes a hanging project. Yeah? So it was done jointly. So when some countries went slow in terms of getting those commitments, getting those financing, so we decided for the sake of maximizing on our investment, we'll get to Naivasha, which is phase 2A, then create a very big special economic zone, yeah, which is there and already being developed on 1,000 acres. And then from there, we upgrade now the MGR, the meter gauge, because it's much cheaper. Yeah. So what we've done is when we reached Naivasha, now from there, we have actually done a new contract, which was about 10 billion from Naivasha all the way to Malaba. Because Uganda also now decided they also do MGR from Malaba. So already Uganda has signed off also from Malaba to Kampala, which is being done by the same company, which was doing on Kenyan side. So that way, you can have a seamless connectivity, yeah, all the way from Mombasa to Malaba, which is what was intended, but at much cheaper cost. The good thing is that goods from Nairobi to Mombasa and vice versa, as we are now taking maximum advantage of the SGR. And the same thing will be now from Nairobi to Naivasha. That way, our investment is basically viable. It is value for money. But then from there, we do not want to do the SGR because it will connect with the MGR on the side of Uganda.
And if you can make a case for improving the meter gauge railway from Naivasha to the border and Uganda taking over from there, why then wouldn't Kenyans make a case for improving the meter gauge railway from Mombasa to the entire stretch?
Yeah, good question. The point is, the volume SGR carries, the meter gauge could not actually do from Mombasa to Nairobi. Because beyond Nairobi, it's only 30% of what comes from Mombasa. Nairobi being the major industrial hub, we could not service with the MGR. For example, currently we are running like between 11 and 14 trains, SGR. With the speed of SGR, you know, the meter gauge, even if you rehabilitate it, it will not cope with Mombasa, Nairobi. And so there was still a very big case to do our side of MGR from Mombasa to Nairobi, and even now to Naivasha because of the special economic zone. Because we want to move the industrial activity from Nairobi and move as much as possible to the Rift Valley, which is Naivasha. So then the SGR then becomes a viable investment by doing that.
We're talking about, is it 400 plus billion shillings for the entire stretch from Mombasa to Naivasha?
Yes, about 450
billion, 400 billion shillings, you say. So for us to see the return on investment, how long is it going to take us?
You'd be interested to know that already is making profit. Every month, these are facts, these are the figures which we have. It makes 1.3 billion revenues every month compared to cost of 800 million. So every month it's making about between 300 million and 500 million in profit. And that's why we've not had an issue, like for example, in servicing what they call the escrow account, which is where we put money to pay the loan. That's why we've not had an issue. Okay. There's been no defaults. So it is actually making profit even before we connect now with the MGR to Uganda.
What is the rate of repayment that is required every
those are the numbers with the treasury. Okay. I think it's about 25 billion or thereabouts.
Every year?
I think about 25 billion.
So that's about 2 billion shillings every...
Yes.
Then therefore it means even if you're making a bit of profit, which you're putting at 500 million shillings, it's still not sufficient.
But you see, when you say loan, that's capital. Okay. What matters is the operational account. You see, today, take for example this house. I can be told to repay it within 10 years, for example. It doesn't mean that the rent I'm getting should be able to equate to that. What is important for SGR is to make sure that the operational account is positive. Right. Because this is which determines the viability of that business. Upon the payment of the loan, this cash flow then becomes available to government because it will be there after paying the loan.
And Waziri, there are so many projects that your ministry has undertaken. If you talk about the roads or the construction of the port in Lamu, but there's also that reliance on Chinese companies to do the construction. And I remember in November 2020, I spoke to the former leader of majority, Aden Duale, and he was saying that there are certain clique of people that took the country to China, and the driving force was kickbacks, that there would be 10% of the negotiated contractual value that would come to certain figures in the country. How true is that?
Well, maybe Dore can answer that because he knows where his figures came from. But what we do, Sam, is for any project, we go through a very, very competitive process, and we make sure we do not spend more money than we have to. So if some of those projects are won by the Chinese, it's because their bids are a lot more competitive. And I give you an example. We have this road from Keno to Marwa, which was open for competitive bidding. Lot 1 from Keno to Sagana, it's being done at a cost of about 7 billion. From Sagana to Marwa is being done at 6 billion. Total about 13 billion. Now, look at the bids which we got. When you open the bids from Keno to Sagana, the winning bidder was at 7. We had some European companies, which I will not mention, who had gone all the way to 18 billion. 18. So when people say we are giving Chinese, am I going to give a project for the sake of not giving Chinese at 18 billion when it could have been done at 7 billion? The same standard.
There's no difference in the kind of work that will be done?
It's us who determine the standard. We do the specs. And we have resident engineers, we have project engineers to monitor what is being done. That's the difference. That we do not want to spend more money than we have to.
Apart from the cost, what makes Chinese contractors attractive for Kenya?
First of all, they are very, very fast. Very fast in terms of making decisions, in terms of implementation of projects. They are very, very fast. And we just need to see some of the projects we are doing. This expressway, it was launched by the president, October 2019. Now it's 80% complete. At the same time, we were discussing with another consortium, European consortium, to do the Riloni-Mau Summit. We started negotiations September 2016. We have not finished negotiations.
Since 2016? Yes. 5 years now?
Yes. In the meantime, we're about to finish the expressway.
So
the speed of doing, the way they do their work, they bring very skilled people. They put off-site facilities to do precasting and so forth. They work 24 hours. Their cost is low because they manage their cost component very well. And so this is what makes it very attractive for us. Okay.
And Waziri, in the law there's a requirement that for international tenders there has to be local content of about 40%. If I'm mistaken, you can correct me. How have we ensured this, that you have, yes, big projects, talk of the expressway, the SGR, but 40% of the content is coming from Kenya?
Well, it's project by project, it does matter. We do have that requirement where, for example, it is a requirement that you have to have 30% or 40%. We invite Kenyan companies to get in joint venture with these companies, so that 40% is for real and can be measured. So that is there, that is happening.
Is it happening?
Oh, it is happening, it is happening. I can tell you for sure. for sure. Even SGR, phase 1, yes, there was an issue because I think by then those things were not formalized. But phase 2A, there was that 40% auditable as to how much local materials, local labor, or whatever it is, to make sure they go the 40% minimum.
Let's talk about expressway, because you've mentioned it a couple of times, but I'm interested to know, how was this idea birthed or conceived?
In a very interesting manner. In a very interesting manner, because I recall it was early 2019, and we've been sent to China to finalize some issues to do with the SGR. And when we were in China, we arrived, and then Beijing airport, we were taken to Beijing city. It took about 25 minutes because this highway had 6 lanes on both sides. And when we did dinner, we asked our hosts, how did you do this? This road is fantastic. It took us 25 minutes, a very long distance. They told us that road is on their balance sheet. It's their road. The same company we went to see for SGR. So we asked them over dinner, would you consider something similar for Nairobi? And they reflected on it the same evening. They said they have been to Nairobi, whereby the president of the company had been stuck in a traffic jam for 2.5 hours from Jomo Kenyatta Airport to CBD Nairobi. And so it did not require a lot of convincing for him to know that we have a problem here in terms of traffic, meaning that problem can be converted into an opportunity. And so we agreed the same night that in principle they'll look into it. And I did call the president, our president, the same evening. And the president was actually quite excited about the idea. And the same night he called the finance CS Rotich, and asked them to board a plane and go to China and join us so that we could discuss now the financial modalities of how the PPP could be done. And the rest is history. They sent, within 2 weeks, a team to do a census of the vehicles passing through that Mombasa Road from Jomo Kenyatta Airport. And on that day, they counted about 30,000 vehicles. And so with those numbers, they fitted it in their model, financial model, and we confirmed that indeed it can be a viable project at a PPP. And so they started looking for their finances. By October 2019, it was launched by the president.
Earlier, we took a tour of the expressway that the cabinet secretary says is at about 80% completion, taking a tour of what is becoming a transformation of the city of Nairobi.
A project of 65 billion shillings where Kenya is not borrowing a single cent. And this is what we want to do for other big projects. And so we are very happy that indeed we are not leaving a burden to Kenyans in terms of debt for that expressway. It's going to solve a big problem. Going to the airport was going to be take 20 minutes. But also more importantly, it was a link which was part of a bigger road. Now, if you go all the way to Machakos turnoff, in Machakos, we are drawing that road all the way to Athi River. It's a separate contract. Then from Athi River, we now go on the expressway, Mororongo, all the way to James Gishuru. Stop. James Gishuru to Rironi, we have another project, which is now 95% complete. Yeah? Take you to Rironi. And then from Rironi, we are doing now the very big project, which will be taking us all the way to Mau Summit. So this expressway was a very major missing link.
That aspect that you'll spend almost 70 billion shillings and the Kenyan will not be required to pay in form of a debt, how then does the contractor recover their money, and for how long?
Yeah, if we did not do the PPP, what could have happened is government could have gone and borrowed the money, 70 billion, which then Kenyans will pay with interest over time. By doing the PPP, the contractor becomes the investor. They look for 70 billion shillings. They do the roads, and then we agree the model, financial model, how they're going to recover their investment. And so they'll be doing what we call tolling. Anybody using that road, you have to pay a fee. Our job is to make sure that fee is affordable by Kenyans. For example, all the way from Rorongo to James Gishoro is a distance of 27 kilometers. And the charges will range from $1, which is about 100 shillings, to $15, which is about 1,500 shillings, depending on the length you're using the expressway and depending on the size of your vehicle. Your vehicle and my vehicle saloon, it will be $1 from one exit to another exit. If you bring a very big truck, which also be using the same expressway, then they can pay up to 1,500 shillings, which to them is a commercial thing. So obviously it is value for money for them. So the investor will collect the toll over 27 years, recover the investment, then hand over that project back to the government of Kenya at zero cost.
What do you think about the idea to improve the economy through the bottom-up approach?
I don't know. I can see now you are digging deep.
Answer my question.